Today, we are going to see about the best idea we ever had. Any guesses? It's national parks.
That was not going to be my
825.
guess.
We'll see why this was the best idea we ever had in this talk. 825 is celebrated as the National Park Service's 105th birthday this year. And on account of that, we are going to learn a little more about the history of national parks and how it affects the economy and how we can be better visitors to national parks. Let's start with a pop quiz, but don't fret. The first one is pretty easy. Have you ever been to a national park?
Yes.
I see both of you nod. Even I've been to one. That's
Oh,
awesome.
yes.
Do you know how many countries have national parks?
All of them?
Mm,
19. I have no idea.
It's about 100. I would
It's
assume.
way off.
Yeah. How many national park sites are there in the US? Any guesses for that?
43.
Just
I would
one number
say
missing.
100 or two, maybe 300.
Yeah, right about there. The right number is 423. You just missed it too, Ryan.
I did. Dang it.
So in this talk, we are going to cover about the timeline of how national parks came about, what is a national park, and some of the US national parks that I've been to and my opinion, and what are the economic impacts of national parks in a country. Finally, we'll learn how to be a responsible visitor when visiting a national park. The idea of national park was born in 1864 when President Lincoln and the Congress set aside Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove of the giant sequoias. Then, the first national park in the world was established by President Ulysses Grant by creating the Yellowstone National Park. When this was created, it opened the floodgates for a lot of countries to follow on this path. In the 1880s, Canada established its first national park. And then in 1909, Europe followed. Sweden was the first European country to establish 9 national parks in 1909. Then Japan and Mexico jumped in 1930. But the general trend has been the Asian and the Latin American countries have been slower to catch up on the idea of national park as compared to the Anglo-American and the US and the American and the European countries. Britain had a huge role in establishing the administrative machinery for creating both national parks and the nature reserves area in 1949. It also went about to create national parks in its colonies, that is, India and Africa, which those countries continued after they gained their independence. So, what is a national park? It is an area set aside by the national government for the preservation of the natural environment. This natural environment can mean different things for different countries. For example, US and Canada tend to focus on the protection of both land and wildlife, but UK tends to focus mainly on the protection of the land. But whereas in Africa, the primary focus is on protection of animals. The minimum size of a national park for an area to be considered a national park is 2,470 acres, and this is set about by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And there is also a sense of national pride in some Asian countries when they go out and conserve the wild nature for prosperity. Then, looking at some of the national parks that I have visited in the US, Oregon has one national park, that is Crater Lake National Park. And all the national parks that I've visited in the US till now have been so different. For example, the Great Sand Dunes National Park or the White Sands National Monument in Albuquerque, it just has white sand. And if you look at the big five in Utah, it's all rock formations in different forms. Then when you look at the Glacier National Park, they have a plethora of wildlife. And not to forget the Yellowstone National Park, which have an entirely different landscape with a ton of geysers. So each different area have their own unique features, and the national parks are a way of protecting them and also providing a place for us to go and have a salubrious weekend or a vacation. Let's see what are some of the economic impacts of national parks. When you think about national parks and economic impacts, obviously there has to be marketing. Marketing can be seen as either an oxymoron or an opportunity. Although the idea of national park was universally acknowledged, the marketing around this has varied dramatically across the 4,000 odd areas around the world. The national parks in Canada and Australia are extensively marketed, meaning there is federal government money going in for tactical and strategical approaches for getting potential users visit the park. But in some other places, for example, the US, the total visitor count is so high that marketing is unwarranted. In some developing countries, the visitor count is so low that marketing is unaffordable and it doesn't make sense. As you can see here, US generated 41.7 billion, that is billion with a B, dollars out of national parks in 2019, and that came from 327 million visitors. As you can see, a lot of us have been visiting national parks. So let's see how to be a responsible visitor when going to a national park. The first, always have a plan and also a backup plan.
Ryan.
Based on
Hello.
based on
That's all right.
the weather and animal sightings, some national parks
Yep.
might have
Hmm.
closures. Also, it's always good to have a backup plan. When taking pictures, always keep safety in mind and never feed or pet wildlife. Also, when you're leaving national parks, make sure you just leave only your footprints behind. With that, I hope on this National Park Service's birthday, you have learned a little more about national parks and also how to be a responsible visitor when visiting a national park. Thank you.
Yay! Great job, Namitha.